Tonight's podcast is why my liberating lingo destroys fossil language. Why liberating lingo rises you out of self help, personal growth, self improvement, punctuated writings. Because my liberating lingo never updates fossil language, it demolishes it. But if you really start understanding the words we use today are really outdated and outmodeled, and they keep us living in yesterday. Fossil language is the hand me down vocabulary of obedience, hesitation, and inherited smallness. And that's what we do. That's what you witness when you start speaking from yesterday and change, heal, create, and all that. You're going into the smallness of your language. It's the museum dust dialect of people who still think their nervous system fear echoes their actual voice. My lingo walks like a desert storm and evicts every outdated word that ever kept me narrating yesterday. It slices through the timid, the polite, and the predictable because anything built from survival chemistry can never survive sovereign clarity. Liberating lingo is never an upgrade, it's a frequency correction, a nervous system now boot, a linguistic jailbreak that dissolves the hauteur, the egotistical armor, and every fossil script pretending to be identity. When I speak from liberation, fossil language never just falls away, it disintegrates on contact. And a liberating lingo is like energize, enterprise. It's words that never go into yesterday. They're about inner, and they give you the energy to move forward. They're the savage wise intro. My liberating lingo never updates fossil languages, it demolishes it. Fossil language is the hand me down vocabulary of obedience, hesitation, and inherited smallness. It slices through the timid, the polite, and the predictable because anything built from survival chemistry can never survive sovereign clarity. Liberating lingo is never an upgrade. It's a frequency correction, a nervous system reboot. The ego armor and every fossil script pretending to be identity. When I speak from liberation, fossil language doesn't fall away, it disintegrates on contact. Liberating lingo bypasses the mind's recycled narratives. While self-help keeps you trapped inside them. Self-help and therapy often circle the same intellectual loops, analyzing, naming, and reframing, and diagnosing what it is. Liberating lingo never negotiates with the mind. It disrupts it and it speaks directly to awareness and through awareness, never memory. The savage veracity is you rise the moment language stops reinforcing the problem and instantly activates the presence beneath it. Liberating lingo dissolves identity maintenance, while self-improvement strengthens the identity you're trying to escape. Self-improvement assumes the you from yesterday needs upgrades. Liberating lingo exposes that yesterday's you was never real to begin with. It frees you from the character instead of polishing the costume. The high frequency clarity is you never evolve the persona, you outgrow it and expand out of it as you rise, shine, and energize your whys. Liberating lingo breaks the punctuation based linear thinking that therapy and personal growth rely on. Punctuated writings organizes thought into past tense logic. How do you see that in your life? I see that in my life all the time. But when you're speaking the liberating lingo, you're rising beyond it, and it opens up a colorful curiosity for you to sculpt your life your way. Therapy often organizes emotion into past tense stories. Liberating lingo breaks the grammar of limitation. It's fluid, present, somatic, and alive. It never explains your life, it activates your life. The savage liberation punchline is why unpunctuated writing rises you out of self-help, personal growth, self-improvement, punctuated writings, and therapy. Dropping straight into your Mesa forged highest frequency, savage liberating voltage. This is exactly your terrain, the place where language stops behaving and starts liberating. Here's why unpunctuated writings rise you out of self-help, personal growth, self-improvement, punctuated writings, and therapy in a clean, bold way. Because punctuated writings keep your mind thinking and going back to where you've been. As unpunctuated writings are breath punctuation and spirit expressions. And why unpunctuated writings lift you out of the self-help maze. Unpunctuated writings breaks the mind's linear trap. Self-help depends on punctuation that forces thought into past tense. Logic, beginning, the middle, and the end. Self-help thrives on that structure because it keeps you analyzing, processing, and revisiting old stories. Unpunctuated writings refuses that architecture. It dissolves the timeline and dissolves the narrative and dissolves the identity that narrative protects. It drops you into pure presence where zero problems can survive. Savage liberation, ferocity. When language stops marching, the mind stops controlling. When language stops marching, the mind stops controlling. Unpunctuated writings bypass the identity that self-improvement keeps trying to fix. Self-improvement assumes that you from yesterday is real and needs upgrades. Therapy often reinforces the same identity by exploring its wounds. Punctuated writings organizes identity into neat emotional paragraphs. As unpunctuated writings does the opposite, it melts the persona and all the scripts from yesterday. It awakens awareness to speak without costume, without performance, and without the mind's editing. The high frequency clarity is you never heal the character, you outgrow the script. Unpunctuated writings activates intuition, never intellect, and intuition is the exit from all programming. Self-help and therapy often keep you in your head, naming, labeling, reframing, explaining, as unpunctuated writings pulls you into the body, the breath, and the now. It becomes a transmission, never a thought. A frequency, never a never a sentence. The savage punchline is unpunctuated writings is language freed from obedience. And when language is free, so are you. Why liberating lingo dissolves my habitual hauteur, dropping straight into your mesa forged highest frequency savage, the simple voltage. Why key points why liberating lingo dissolves all your habitual hauteur, clean, sharp, and cut to the bone true. Liberating lingo deletes the ego script before the ego can perform it. Habitual hauteur is just old identity armor pretending to be confidence. How do you see that in your life? I've witnessed that in my life. When your language stops feeding the persona starves. The savage simplicity. Change the words. The mask has nothing left to stand for. So if you expand out of the words you use and energize the wizardry, the mask has nothing left to stand for. Liberating lingo bypasses the mind and now wires the nervous system directly. Hauteur lives in tension, in rehearsed posturing and survival-based self-inflation. Liberating lingo relaxes the body, and when the body relaxes, the performance collapses. The savage clarity is a regulated nervous system has zero need to posture. Liberating lingo forces presence, and presence dissolves false elevation. Hauteur is always past-based, a character, a costume, or a compensation. Presence has no hierarchy, no performance, and no pretense. The savage authenticity is when you speak from now, everything you used to pretend to be evaporates. Why fossil words keeps me living in yesterday. Fossil words anchor your nervous system to past tense chemistry. Words like change, heal, create, learn, know, plan, drag your body back into emotional choreography of who you used to be. They keep your system rehearsing old fears, old identities, and old timelines. Warrior wise clarity. Fossil words freeze you in yesterday's frequency. Fossil words force you into linear time, the slowest battlefield on earth, because you go back into the events of yesterday. They assume you're becoming, fixing, or catching up, or not yet. The timeline is a trap disguised as progress. Warrior veracity. Linear language delays your power by pretending you're not already in it. Fossil words keep you loyal to the persona instead of to your here and now presence. They reinforce the character you trained yourself to be, to play, not the awareness you actually are. The moment you speak from liberation, the old identity loses its scripts. Warrior wise punchlines. Liberating lingo pulls you to rise of the now. The only place yesterday can never touch is the now. Why the world is stuck in third world enslaving mindsets. The world is stuck because most people still run ancestral survival mode wiring, never sovereign awareness. Third world enslaving mindsets are never geographic, they're neurological. They're the fear-coded reflexes of scarcity, obedience, and danger scanning that in humanity inherited from generations who had zero choice but to survive. Savage clarity: when the nervous system is trapped in survival, the mind becomes a prison guard. How do you see that in your life? I see that in my life. When it becomes trapped, it just shuts down. Fossil language keeps entire cultures speaking in limitation, lack, and low frequency emotional chemistry. Words like should, hope, try, maybe someday keep people narrating powerless vocabulary. The vocabulary trains the nervous system to expect less, shrink more, and obey faster. Where do you see that in your life? I've witnessed that in my life. The savage veracity is if when language is enslaved, the mindset follows. Do you see that in the world today, enslaving mindsets, where I see it big time if you're listening, where people think this should be happening and they're trying to say this thing will take over the world? People have to open up and unleash their natural talents. Systems benefit from predictable, fear-coded populations, so they reinforce the very mindsets that keep people small. Institutions reward compliance, punish the deviation, and normalize emotional poverty. People mistake these conditionings for reality, never realizing it's engineered. The savage punchline is a world stuck in third world mindsets is never lacking resources, it's lacking liberated awareness. While the world is stuck in third world enslaving mindsets of my ancestors' thinking and knowing. Ancestor thinking trains the nervous system to mistake survival for truth. Your ancestors didn't have the luxury of presence. They had to scan for danger and obey hierarchy and cling to certainty. That wiring passed down as common sense, but it's really old fears wearing the mask of knowledge. Savage clarity: the world is stuck because it still treats ancestral fear as modern intelligence. Ancestral knowing glorifies limitation because limitation once kept people alive. Scarcity, caution, obedience, and self-doubt were once survival mode strategies. Where do you see that today? It's occurring big time. Now they're just inherited emotional gravity pulling people back into yesterday. The savage veracity is when you inherit their knowing, you inherit their ceilings. How do you see that in your life? Ancestral mindsets collapse in the now. So the world clings to the past to avoid losing its identity. Identity is built from old stories, old emotions, and old cultural scripts that are playing today. Presence dissolves all that, so people retreat into familiar narratives to feel safe. The savage punchline: the world is stuck because it fears the now. The world is stuck because it fears the now. The only place that the ancestral spell breaks is in the now. Why punctuated writings drag me through my past, keeping cognitive recollections, controlling my thoughts and responses to my daily life that control me. Punctuated writings forces the mind into linear time and replays yesterday instead of unveiling the now. Periods, commas, and tidy sentences trick the nervous system into sequencing thought like a timeline. That timeline is always past anchored, and the savage clarity is linear writing resurrects memories that no longer belong to you. Punctuated writing activates the mind's archives, the part obsessed with recalling, comparing, and interpreting. The moment you structure a thought and the mind digs into a storage unit of old meanings and old emotional files, it becomes the curator of yesterday instead of a broadcaster of your present moment. The savage veracity is punctuation invites the past to narrate your now. Punctuated writings reinforce identity because identity is built from remembered stories, never direct awareness. When you write in the old academic proper fossil format, you unconsciously reinforce the persona that was shaped by those stories. Your responses become rehearsed instead of now. So the savage punchline is punctuated writings keep you loyal to the character you outgrew. And I outgrew. While punctuated writings shut off intuition, imagination, and inspiration. Punctuation forces the mind into structure, and structure suffocates intuition. Intuition speaks in pulses, never periods. The moment you cage a thought in grammar, the mind hijacks the flow and starts organizing, correcting, and controlling. The hellraiser clarity is intuition dies the second the mind starts editing. Intuition dies the second the mind starts editing. Punctuation locks imagination into linear sequences instead of nonlinear revelations. Imagination is wild, nonlinear, multidimensional. Punctuation demands order, sequence, and logic, the exact opposite of innovative emergence. Hellraiser veracity is you can never access infinite realms while obeying finite rules. Punctuation drags inspiration through the intellect, turning a live transmission into a dead sentence. Inspiration arrives as a surge, raw, direct, and unfiltered. As punctuation forces it through the mind's filing cabinet, where it's slowed, shrunk, and sanitized. A hellraiser punchline. Punctuation turns lightning into paperwork. Presence coded broadcast opener tune to your next transmission. While punctuated writings keep you stuck in egotistical fog banks. Punctuation forces a mind into egological, never presence awareness. Punctuation makes the mind organize, judge, categorize every thought. That activates the ego's favorite game, control. The hellraiser clarity, when writing becomes mechanical, the ego becomes the author. Punctuation traps your expression in linear, and the ego thrives in linear thinking. Ego needs sequence, order, and narrative to survive. It can never function in the wild, not a non-linear now. Punctuated writings drag you back into the ego's timeline of before, after, and because. The hellraiser truth is linear is ego's oxygen supply. Punctuation reinforces the persona because it forces you to speak from the mind, never the frequency. The moment you punctuate, you shift from transmitting to performing. You start writing as the character you were trained to be, never the awareness you actually are. The hellraiser punchline is punctuation keeps you loyal to the ego script instead of your liberating signals. Why unpunctuated writings Liberating lingo destroys egotistical fog banks, indoctrinated, educated stagnation in third world enslaving mindsets, opening free flowing wisdom and clarity. Unpunctuated writings is breath punctuation, bypasses the ego's grammar police and connects you to the raw intuition. Punctuation forces the mind to control, correct, and confine your expressions. Remove it, and the ego loses its grip. The flow becomes direct and unfiltered and sovereign. Hellraiser clarity is when the mind can't interrupt inspiration. When the mind can't interrupt, inspiration takes over. Liberating lingo breaks the indoctrinated education stagnation by refusing the fossil rules that trained you to think small, be small, live small. Schooling conditioned you to speak in compliance, structure, and intellectual obedience. Liberating lingo shatters that cage and restores your natural nonlinear wisdom. The hellraiser veracity is when language stops obeying the mind stops kneeling. Unpunctuated flow dissolves third world enslaving mindsets by removing past tense identity that punctuation keeps resurrecting. Punctuation drags you into memory, hierarchy, and inherited emotional gravity. Unpunctuation flows and rises you to the presence where zero old stories can survive. The Hellraiser punchline is presence is the one frequency where ego, fog, indoctrination, and ancestral limitation can never breathe or exist. That's the thing. Unpunctuated writings and liberating lingo liberates you from you. Anyway, I want to thank you and good night.